Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens. It is the Friday night news show, my favourite show of the week. I always say Friday's my favourite show because we ended up going to all different sorts of Leeds United conversations. Obviously we have got topics today. We are going to talk about Jaka Bijol's future at Leeds United. Not that he's got an immediate departure from Leeds United, that's not what I'm saying. But I think we're saying where is he going to slot in to this Leeds United team at this moment in time, because it's not, I think when we thought about what Jaka Bijol will be this summer, it's not quite worked out, I think, so far as we were all expecting. I think he was a statement signing for Leeds United. You saw that with the price that Leeds paid for it, but it hasn't quite worked. We're also going to talk a bit about Spurs, their situation at the moment in time, their injury news, because there is some positive injuries for Spurs, which actually should help Leeds United, especially in that striker position for Spurs. And we are also going to talk a bit about what's next for Leeds United, what is next in the next sort of 6 games coming up, because actually Leeds have got quite a favourable run over the next 6 games. I'm going to talk about where they're going to be, because actually after the next 6 games, I think we played Man City away, Chelsea at home and Liverpool at home, so it's important we pick up points before that point, of course. But as always, because it is the Friday night show and you are live, get your comments, and even if you're not live, anything we talk about, naturally leave it in the comments below. But let's get into the first show we start with, and let's where should we start? Let's start with Spurs' injury news, because there's some mixed updates. We always see this with Daniel Farke, by the way, don't we? Like in Daniel Farke's press conferences, I always find it so funny because he always goes, there's a bit of a mixed update on injury news. Yes, cheers, Daniel. But it's a mixed update on injury news for Spurs as well. The positive side for Leeds United is that Kolomuani and Solanke are both going to miss this one. Solanke's just had an operation. He was always going to miss the game. But actually, Kolomuani is close to return and actually been training with Spurs. But fortunately for Leeds United, Kolomuani is not able to play today. He's just basically only trained twice. Jack says, evening, Scott. Evening to you too, Jack. Also, as we always talk about, yeah, get your comments in because it is a Friday night show. And we always end up buzzing around all over the place on a Friday. As I said, it's always my favourite show of the week. I say it every single time. So yeah, that is a positive for Leeds United for sure. The fact that Kolomuani and Solanke are out, I actually think Richarlison's the worst of the 3 strikers. I don't think Solanke's a bad striker. I think you saw that what I did with Bournemouth. And I think he's a reasonable Premier League striker now. Kolomuani as well has got a lot of pedigree. He had a really good time, obviously, at Juventus in his most recent loan. Obviously, his PSG moved in as well. But I do think there's pedigree in Kolomuani. So I am quite glad that them two are missing for this fixture. And Richarlison up front, obviously then, if he comes off, which I don't think he will do, where do Spurs go then? Like, they don't really have anywhere to go, do they, at that moment in time? So, yeah, Richarlison, I think, is the least threat of all of them. He's got a goal in Richarlison, but I think there's parts of Richarlison's game that are not that good, in my opinion. And we've talked about this before on the channel. Not to jinx it, because I think, obviously, Spurs are a good team, coached by a really good manager. We know they're a really good team. But what I would say about the Spurs team, and I've said this a couple of times, I don't actually think to say they're a quote-unquote top 6 team and they reckon they should be in the Super League and all this crap. I don't think that they're a team blessed with unbelievable quality all over the pitch, in my personal opinion. I really don't. Like, I look at the front 3. Kudus is a lad that's okay, he's got pedigree. He didn't really work for him at West Ham, though. And yes, he hasn't really, I don't think he's scored a goal yet for Spurs. I think he's a threat in terms of assisting, but I don't think he's like a top level Premier League player, in my personal opinion. We might see that. Xavi Simons is new to the league, also playing out of position on the left-hand side, and Richarlison up front. And I look at it and go, all right, maybe on paper they're decent Premier League players, but I don't think they've got anyone that's like properly top-notch Premier League standard, in my opinion, of like Champions League level players. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm quite optimistic about the Spurs situation. And obviously now they've got Solanke and Kolomuani missing as well. I think it's a really good opportunity tomorrow for Leeds United to get some serious points in this game. I really do. And my only main concern about the game, and we talked about it in the preview, if you haven't watched that, I would definitely recommend watching it. It's doing quite well, actually, for a preview from this channel. So if you do want that, it's only about 12 minutes long. I would recommend watching it, but wait till you finish this show. But yeah, the only situation I think that does worry me more about this game is, of course, Thomas Frank being the manager. I think he's an excellent coach at this level, and at any level, really. We've seen him be fantastic with Brentford, all the way up from the Championship campaigns into the Premier League, and keeping in the Premier League for year on year on year. So Thomas Frank's a real sort of coup for them. But But yeah, I don't think they're unbelievable right now. I think we're playing them at the right time. I think they've had a dip in form, and Leeds' performances have been encouraging at home as well. Yeah, I completely agree, Jack. I think the home thing is something naturally that Leeds United is going to be a massive strength for us. We haven't lost at home yet. We obviously haven't lost at home for, I think, like 24 games. Now, of course, a lot of them are in the Championship, but naturally, to not losing that amount of time, I think since Daniel Farke has come in to the club, we've been unbelievable at home as well. So I, at the moment in time, I don't think we're going to lose tomorrow. And as I said, I look at the sort of Spurs situation. And the thing that people haven't mentioned with Spurs, and when we talk about the injuries, like we can talk about what he said in his press conference, but actually, no Maddison, obviously, with his ACL injury is fantastic. And no Kulusevski as well. Two massive creative sparks in the middle of the pitch. Like, Bergvall is obviously a different profile to them in terms of the opposite physicality setting that they do. I think he's much more better, as I said, in a physical standpoint, in terms of getting around the pitch and pressing and stuff like that. But actually, in terms of quality, who's going to open up a game, I think the likes of a Maddison or a Kulusevski are better players in that opinion. So when I look at the team, Xavi Simons worries me slightly in terms of dragging maybe Bogle inside to obviously give Udogie and sort of the freedom of the outside. But I'm not overly worried about individuals in this game personally. Like sometimes we go into games, like we went into the Bournemouth game, for example, and Semenyo, I'm looking at thinking that's a nightmare. He's such a top player. I don't think Spurs have got someone on Semenyo's level, in my opinion. That's not my mad, because obviously he's playing for Bournemouth, but that's the level Bournemouth are at this moment in time. I think Semenyo's it should be playing for Arsenal, someone like that, in my opinion. So I'm quite relatively optimistic about the game tomorrow, I would say. However, on the negative side, on the mixed approach, not it's like a mixed kebab where you get a bit of chicken and a bit of, I don't know, lamb, let's say. Anyway, we're going off topic here. Christian Romero is back for Spurs. He missed the game against Bodo Glimt, which is why there was a bit of doubt in sort of the mind of fans if he was actually going to play, in the mind of Spurs fans. Unfortunately, he is fit. And this is a bit of a shame, actually, because Romero's massive for that Spurs team. I think that you will see how good Romero is on the ball, in my opinion. I think he's probably one of the most underrated defenders in the whole Premier League, in my personal opinion, as well. Not just what he does off the ball, but his leadership. I think he's pretty dominant from set plays as well. I think he's good to get his head out. He's not actually that big, but he's just so aggressive. So I think he's a massive coup for Spurs, in my opinion. The fact he's back fit, I think him up with Van der Ven at the centre-half positions is a massive positive for Spurs tomorrow. Obviously, Van der Ven offers that speed in behind for the ball at the top, and I think Romero's the better player of the ball. I think he's better on the ball. So yeah, that's my slight worry. You could only get Spurs compared to a mixed kebab on the Leeds lens. Yeah, I'm not sure about that reference. I haven't had a mixed kebab. If you want to know what I've had for tea, I've actually had a pizza. So, there you are. Anyway, let's move on from Spurs and their injury situation, and let's talk about something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, to be honest. I've just been waiting for an opportunity where there is a lack of news, and that is about Jaka Bijol. Jaka Bijol, at this moment in time, slightly worries me, I've got to be honest. Not because of performance levels, just because I look at a player at this moment in time that we spent, like £18 million on in the summer, in under a tight budget. Like, we know we probably had 100 million to spend, and that's what our spend was in the summer. And £18 million, that, one of our statement signings, Jaka Bijol, just can't get a kick at the moment. Obviously played in the cup game against Sheffield Wednesday. I don't think he was great in that game, and it was a different sort of game. And I'm looking at, other than injuries, when is he actually going to play? Because my worry at this moment in time is, like, I think there's a sort of feeling in the Leeds space that as soon as Pascal Struijk has a bad game, that sort of Bijol's going to come straight in the team. And I'm not sure I see that. I'm really not sure I see that. I think Struijk's very pivotal to the way Leeds United play, not just off the ball, but on the ball as well. I think he's a much better ball player than Jaka Bijol. And the way he can sort of maraud into the midfield and dictate and almost occupy that sort of holding midfield position, I think really helps Leeds United. And I look at sort of Bijol as a not an obvious profile replacement. So it's almost like going from a really defensive right back to a more attacking right back. I know it sounds different because it's different positions, but I think in terms of a profile, I don't see Bijol and Struijk as a very similar profile of centre back at all. They're both left-footed, of course, but I think they're different in terms of what qualities they can give. And obviously, with basically Farke wanting to pick Struijk in every single game at the moment, I don't think the game setting is dependent on obviously if Bijol plays or not. So then it makes me wonder, sort of, if we've already bought Bornau as well, should we have gone there with Jaka Bijol? And this is only 6 games in, so this might be a bit too early. And I think there's something in that. But I don't know, I'm just a bit concerned about the signing. Obviously, Slovenian manager was talking as well. I'm not going to try to pronounce his full name, I'm just going to call him Kek. But he basically defended Daniel Farke's position and said, look, obviously, Jaka Bijol missed the first game. because he was suspended. He got suspended in Italy, and then obviously that suspension passes over to England, which sounds utterly bizarre, but that's obviously what happened, as we know. But I just find it slightly worrying and slightly bizarre that he hasn't had more of a chance. Like, when you looked at sort of the signings that were going to come in, and when we saw combined 11s that Leeds United fans were making in the summer window, literally everybody had Bijol in centre half. And obviously we know Pascal Struijk does it with injury problems. So obviously when he gets injured at some point, which he probably will, unfortunately, hopefully he doesn't, but unfortunately probably will, I'm slightly concerned that unless he gets injured, he's not going to get in the team. So then it's like, all right, if we're not going to use him, we've got to still use him in a certain capacity. And this goes more of my worry about the Bijol situation, because I know people have talked about Bijol and they're like, yeah, but sort of he's going to come in the team and this and that. My concern is, I look at some of the games we've played, and actually it was something that Daniel Farke said in his press conference that sort of triggered this reaction in me for a different reason. Because he got asked about Jaka Bijol, and obviously against Bournemouth, we went into a sort of a low block approach for the last sort of 20 minutes, last 10 minutes or such, to try to see out the game. And they asked him, should Jaka Bijol have come on in that scenario to sort of aid in the defensive duty? And basically, Daniel Farke said that the reason Jaka Bijol didn't come on in that game against Bournemouth was because not a lot of crosses were going into the box. That's what he said. He said there's not a lot of crosses coming in the box, so actually we need to stop the midfield play. So we're better having 5 midfielders to stop the middle of the pitch and to stop Bournemouth playing through us than having 5 defenders, because there's not a lot of heading for Rodon and Pascal Struijk to do. And actually, that reasoning I completely got behind. So I've seen you comment, Jack, as well. I'll get back to that in a second. So I get the logic in that particular game. It's Bournemouth. But the reason that logic for me falls down is I look at the game before against Wolves. I can't even stress how many crosses Wolves put in that second half. I think I looked and they put over 10 crosses in the second half. I didn't even watch that Wolves game. It was an absolute onslaught of crossing into the box in that second half. And he didn't play. So I understand Daniel Farke's reasoning in terms of him not playing in a game. And not playing, it seems like flashing lights, because I think there's a storm going on at this moment in time. But I understand him not playing in the game against Bournemouth. I understood that rationale. But then that rationale cannot be applied to the Wolves game. And then I look at this Spurs game, and I think this is why I want to talk about this now, because the Spurs game, I looked at their underlying data. They're the third most, they've put the third most crosses into the league this year. Third most crosses in the league into the box. So if Leeds United are up in the game and we do drop into a low block, I'll be interested to see how Daniel Farke looks at it from that point. Because then I would like to see Jaka Bijol come into this team. Jaka Bijol's by far the best terrier of the ball in the team. Obviously, I think that's something we can use going forward. But actually, in defending crosses coming into the box, that's going to be massive for Leeds United, as we well know. So if Spurs are doing an onslaught of crosses, like we saw with Wolves, and I think like we saw with Fulham as well, and Jaka Bijol doesn't come into the pitch, I think we need to re-ask that question in the press conference about when is Jaka Bijol going to be used? And if we go to a low block, even when crosses are coming in now, Daniel, why are you still not picking Bijol? And this is not an excitement and a want for Jaka Bijol to play, because truthfully, I want the best for Leeds United. That's what I want. I don't care who's playing. And this might be a forced argument in terms of like we've got to play him for no reason. But I just think when you spend the money that we have with the limited budget we know Leeds United have had in the summer, I would expect just more use to have come for it. So I'm looking at finding ways that he would actually be involved. And I don't know. At this moment in time, I'm a bit sort of unsure on that. Struijk has been impressive and deserves to keep his place. It's frustrating with Bijol because we've spent so much on him. This is my point, Jack. And if you're the Leeds United board at this moment in time, are you looking at the situation and going, do you know what it is? We've got Pascal Struijk playing at centre-half. We've got Rodon playing the other centre-half position. We're crying out for a right winger at this moment in time. We're playing Brendan Aronson, who was a number 10 last year, on right wing. And all right, some people might say he's doing a good job there. I personally don't think he is. But all right, we might think he's doing a good job there. Wouldn't that £18 million have been better spent on a right winger? It would. There's no doubt about it. Because that £18 million right winger, unlike Bijol, would be playing for Leeds United at this moment in time. They would be playing. And then I look at sort of what happened last year and why Struijk is playing more this year than we all thought he would, let's be honest. And I think it's because as a club, we underestimated how good our defence was last year. Our underlying data last year, we conceded the least XG. Burnley broke the defensive record in the Championship last year. They were the best defence ever in history for goals conceded. Leeds United conceded less XG than they did last year. And the reason we conceded so many more goals, as we all know, as we watched last year, was because Meslier was playing in goal and he was letting in so many shots. And I think going into this summer, we've thought we needed a centre-half and we've actually forgot that actually, in terms of defensive, a lot of the goals we conceded weren't actually at the door of Pascal Struijk. They weren't at the door of Joe Rodon. They were at the door of the Illan Meslier, the goalkeeper. And I know people knew that at the time, but I don't think we've emphasised enough how important having a new goalkeeper in, even putting Darlow in goal, was in comparison to Meslier. Because Leeds United would have had the best defence in Championship history last year if we had a half-decent goalkeeper in goal. The best defence in history. And we then went and changed our centre-halves. So for me, there's no... When you look at that and think, we had the best... We should probably, in terms of defenders, we probably should have had the best defence in history. Bearing in mind, we played Junior Firpo at left-back as well. And Goodmanson, as we know, is a better full-back defensively. So I look at it and go... We might have made a mistake. The only thing I will say is, it's unless the board have thought Pascal Struijk he can't play a 38-game season. But my only thing back to that is, he was trying to play a 46-game season last year, and it's 8 more games in the Championship, so it's much more difficult. So that's what, and you obviously got midweek games on top of that, which naturally leads to more injuries. So basically, we've spent in this current climate, we've spent £18 million when we're crying out for a right winger on a backup centre back, and this is not a slander on Jaka Bijol. No way. I haven't even seen him play, so how could I possibly slander him? It's just, if you're asking me right now, would I rather get rid of Bijol in an ideal scenario? We can't do this, and I wouldn't want to do it now because we've already signed him. But in an ideal scenario right now, if the summer was there still and I'm £18 million and I can buy Bijol, or I can buy a right winger who's actually going to start for the club at this moment in time, who would I pick? It obviously have to be the right winger, because I think adding another Noah Okafor level on the right-hand side would give Leeds United a greater output and a greater return on investment, which is obviously what Leeds United were looking for in terms of the summer transfer window. So yeah, I'm just interested to know what you guys think on this, because it's not, as I said, I just want to make this clear, it's not a slander on Jaka Bijol and his ability. None of that. I've seen one game for Jaka Bijol. I didn't think he was that great, but it's not a slander on his ability at all. It's just about use of funds. And I think it's a slight mistake in the summer and the slight overshot in the summer that we think we need another centre-half, when actually Burnley weren't looking at replacing their 2 centre-halves. Like, if Burnley hadn't have lost Egan Riley, they wouldn't have gone and got Ekdal and started him. It would have been Egan Riley and Esteve, because they knew they were good enough. Well, we had a better defence in terms of XG, and we thought we needed a replacement. Maybe we just didn't need another centre-half in the summer, because maybe the centre-backs we had in the Championship were that good, but we're just getting screwed by Meslier, as we know, by the way, that actually it overshadowed Leeds United spending a ton of money, or a massive proportion, a fifth of the whole spend, on a centre-back that actually the priority would have been on an attacker. So I think I just think that's an interesting conversation. Farke's always had loyalty to certain players, and players, you could argue, seems Struijk falls into that category. Can't complain, he's playing well, but would like to see Bijol. Yeah, it's an interesting one with that. It is an interesting one, because he can't not Pascal Struijk. I didn't actually think he had his best game against Bournemouth, in my personal opinion. I thought he had not a poor game. I don't think he was as influential on the ball as I think I would have liked to have seen with Pascal Struijk. But it wasn't a bad game from Pascal in any way, shape or form, especially on a defensive duty. So I think we've just underrated the ability of Pascal Struijk and Rodon in the summer transfer window. But that's a good thing in a way, because now we've got players that we thought would... And I didn't think, looking at the summer window, that if we had Bogle, Rodon and Struijk in our back four, we'd be as solid defensively as we are. I didn't think that was the case. But they've showed me completely wrong, because we've had a lot of players like this. Bo's been one of our better players this year. Ampadu has as well. These players have adapted to the Premier League so well. Even Pascal Struijk, even Karl Darlow, if we're being totally honest, has adapted to the Premier League better than we all thought we did. Because let's not forget this, by the way. When Karl Darlow went in goal, do you remember the backlash on Twitter? Like, it was like, oh my God, we can't have Karl Darlow playing in the Premier League. I actually defended Karl Darlow at that point. I thought he was okay, and I thought he'd be absolutely fine, and he has been. But I just remember the backlash of it. I also do think Perry's going to come back in at some point. That's just my opinion. So yeah, that is my current situation. I just think it'll be interesting, the Spurs game, what actually happens with Jaka Bijol, because if they are crossing a load of crosses in, we should be using Bijol, in my opinion, at that point, and going to a back five when he's such a good header of the ball, the best header of the ball in the team. A backup was definitely needed, but in hindsight, we should have got a winger. Makes the deadline day panic look unnecessary. Yeah, this is part of it. Yeah, this is part of it. I don't disagree that we should have bought someone in who's going to play backup to Pascal Struijk, because we know he's got an injury problem there. He has for years. People can say it's not chronic injury. It obviously is. So we should have bought a backup. But do we need to spend 18 million on a backup for Pascal Struijk and then spend another 5 on Ball now? We didn't, did we? We didn't need two. If we're going to start, if Pascal Struijk's your starting centre back, you don't need the money we've paid. The way I'll word it like this: the money we have paid for Jaka Bijol was as if he was going to be a starter. I don't think Leeds United went into the summer thinking we're going to pay 14 million for a backup defender and then pay another 5 million for another backup. I don't think they thought they were going to do that. So yeah, the only thing I will say, if you're Jaka Bijol, he won't be watching, but if he was watching, I would say to him, Daniel Farke is a very trusting manager. He's a very trusting manager. And if you play well for him and get your way into this team, like we've seen with Sean Longstaff, like we saw with Tanaka last year, like we saw with Joe Rothwell last year, if you get in the team and play well, he will continue to pick you unless you make a mistake, unless you start performing poorly. That's what he does. He's very loyal, Daniel Farke. He's the most loyal, one of the most loyal managers I remember at Leeds United. If someone gets into the team and plays well, he picks them week in, week out, over and over again. And then it's when you get injured that you come out of the team. And then if the lad that does well comes back in for you. So if, like last year, we had Solomon started the season on the left-hand side. Then then Solomon got injured. Ramazani started. He was doing well. Then Ramazani was in the team. Then Ramazani got injured. Solomon got back in the team and he kept him in for the rest of the season. But maybe if Ramazani hadn't got injured at that moment in time, he would have saw more minutes. I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I think that's what we've seen from Daniel Farke so far. Because bear in mind, Daniel Farke in the Championship, by the way, which is another thing with this centre-back situation. At times, we had Pascal Struijk fit and ready to go at centre-back, and he continued to play Ethan Ampadu at centre-back. That did happen last season, by the way. That did happen. So, it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation, I think. Anyway, let's move on to something else I want to talk about, which is Leeds United's next 6 fixtures. Obviously, one of them's the Spurs game, I'm sure, as we're all aware. But Leeds United's next 6 games, we've got Spurs at home, Burnley away, West Ham at home, Brighton away, Forest away, who've still got Ange Postecoglou, and Aston Villa at home. Now, if you are watching live, and if you're not, let me know how many points you think Leeds United are going to pick up in them games. I'll repeat it one more time. We've got Spurs at home, Burnley away, West Ham at home, Brighton away, Nottingham Forest away, and Aston Villa at home. How many points do Leeds pick up in that game? Easy says, I don't think our fan base are the best judges of talent. Interesting. We've spent so long in lower level football that we have a generation of fans who can't identify a good squad and where they see one. I presume this means in Easy knowing sort of where you lie usually in the debate, that you think actually our squad's better than it should have been. And I think in defence, you're right, by the way. I do think in terms of, I know Easy, for anyone who doesn't know, he's very sort of complimentary of this squad. He thinks it's a good squad. He thinks we should be finishing mid-table, easily mid-table. The weather is horrendous, by the way. I hope this don't cut out. But I do agree with Easy. And as I said, I think you're right, Easy, in terms of the defence especially. Because I think people forgot how negative and how detrimental Meslier was to this back line. We had the best, not in terms of defence as a whole, because it's everything, but in terms of, for me, a back four last season of Bogle, Rodon, Struijk and Firpo, that was a better back four than Burnley's. It was. Statistically, it was. In every metric, it was. The only reason it wasn't is because we had a Nelly the Elephant in goal who couldn't save anything. So, that's why. I'm not sure about Nelly the Elephant conversation, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on from the defence and let's move on to talk about the next 6 games, because I think the next 6 games are a massive point. And the reason we talked about this obviously is what I mentioned at the start of the video, which is that after Leeds United's next 6 games, we've got Chelsea at home. I think we've got Man City away, Chelsea at home, and Liverpool at home. 3 games that, let's be honest, we all think are going to be tricky. I actually think the Chelsea game is a potential points getter for us. I mean, we are on the same points at Chelsea at this moment in time. Don't think the season will end like that, if we're being honest. But we are. So I think that'll be a chance for us to get points. The only thing I would say is that I think Liverpool is going to be unbelievably tricky. And obviously Man City away is unbelievably tricky. If that's even possible. So we are going to need to pick up points in the next few. Everybody knows this. But what's interesting is I think we thought a few weeks ago, up until the game against West Ham, I had in my head Leeds United in the next few games when we had Fulham, I think we had Wolves, we obviously had Bournemouth at home, we had the Spurs game at the weekend, we had Burnley away, and then we had West Ham. I thought that was like a block of 6 that was massively important that Leeds picked up points, and I thought them games were going to be vital for Leeds United. And so far, obviously, we've picked up a point again. We've picked up 3 points against Wolves. We've picked up, obviously, a point against Bournemouth. It's not looking too bad. But that was my only thing, was we need to pick up points there, because I look at Brighton away, I look at Forest away, and I look at Villa at home, and I thought they were tricky fixtures. I think now you look at it and you go, actually, Brighton away, if we start with them, They haven't won. Last year, they didn't beat any of the promoted clubs. All of them that got relegated, they drew with Southampton, they drew with Ipswich, and they drew with Leicester. I think they drew 0-0 with Ipswich, they drew 1-0 with Southampton, and they drew 2-2 with Leicester. So I look at that and think, we're all gassing Brighton up as like, wow, what a hard fixture that is. You look at it and you go, well, there's every reason Leeds United can get points against Brighton, 100%. Then you look at Nottingham Forest away, and there has been reports, there's been a few contrasting reports in the Forest community, but there has been reports in the last sort of 24 hours since the game against Midtjylland that they will give Ange Postecoglou until the November international break. That is when that's when Forest will give him till. And obviously he's just come into the club. Leeds United play Nottingham Forest the week before the November international break. So I think that's perfect time for Leeds, because obviously the international break is coming up after this weekend. We've got Spurs, then it's international break. I think this will come too early for Ange Postecoglou to get the sack. I think this will be too early for him. I don't think they're going to sack him after the first international break. When they would actually sack him, though, is after the second international break. I think when they get to November, I agree with their reports. I think there's a chance he gets sacked but by that second international break. And we know, obviously, that international breaks are naturally a time when... we also know that international breaks are naturally a time when managers get sacked. Leeds United play Forest a really, really good team. We saw, obviously, what Sunderland did to Nottingham Forest last weekend as well. So we know they've got a really good opportunity to pick up points. That's a really good opportunity to pick up points. And I do think there is a possibility that we play Nottingham Forest at a perfect time. And then you look at Aston Villa at home, and yes, they've picked up in recent weeks. But that home game we've seen with Bournemouth at home, I think potentially could finish above. I think who potentially could finish above Villa. We've seen Everton at home, who I think potentially could finish above Villa. The Leeds United at home, we've seen with Newcastle at home, who would definitely will finish above Villa, in my opinion. That we can pick up points against anyone at home, pretty much. So you look at them three after now: Brighton, Nottingham Forest away, and Aston Villa, and I'm quite optimistic about it. I am quite optimistic because I look at them games and think it's not so bad. Scott, every Premier League game is tricky, but for us, it's also tricky for our position. Yeah, I agree. I think that every single team in the league right now has got a threat. I think they all do. I think Burnley struggle a bit. I think Jadon Anderson has had a purple patch, but I think in terms of an attacking sense, they're not particularly great at all. And I think they will end up being the lowest scorer in the league. But I agree with Easy. Every single team has got good players. I actually think Burnley away as well. If you want a bit of a quick summary, I think Burnley away is going to be really tricky for us. I think it's an awful game. Will batter Forest even if Ange is still there? Yeah, I hope. We'll batter Forest if Ange is still there. Yeah, I agree. I think we beat Forest. At this moment in time, if I could play anybody in the league, I would be playing Forest at home, or I'd play Man United at home. People might think that's mad. They're the two easiest fixtures in the Premier League at this moment in time. Opportunity for points there, sure. League feels very balanced this season. I agree. I think unless you're the top four, anyone can beat anyone. I think you've seen that throughout the league. Even the top four. Chelsea on 8 points. I think Man City are on something like are they on about 10 points? Man City are 11 points. Everyone is beating everybody. Even Liverpool obviously lost to Crystal Palace at the weekend. So I agree. I think every game is possible, and I think every game is plausible for Leeds United to get points. Burnley's also a must win. I don't agree with that, actually, Sebastian. I actually don't agree with that, if I'm being honest. I think we went into the season where we sort of went, we've got to beat Sunderland home and away, we've got to beat Burnley home and away, and then we're going to lose to everybody else, and hopefully we'll beat, I don't know, West Ham at home and a few other teams. I actually don't think Burnley's a must-win. And the reason I say that is because we've picked up so many good results so far that we've almost stopped that, if that makes sense. And I don't think Burnley, we've got to, again, like Easy said, every team is tricky for us. Every team is going to be tricky. And Burnley's going to be no different. Burnley is still, I think, other than the Liverpool game, Burnley are unbeaten at home so far this season. And by the way, the Liverpool game, if anyone watched it, they lost in the 96th minute or something, when they had 10 men, from a stupid handball that Hannibal Mabry did. I'm telling you that Burnley away will be a tricky game. If you want a record, Burnley away will be tricky. There is not a top four. The league is fluid. I do think, I agree with you to an extent. I think Chelsea are worse than people think, if I'm being honest. And I look at Chelsea's back four especially, or even the back two centre-halves and the goalkeeper. Robert Sanchez, Chalobah, who's okay, by the way, and whoever else they want to play at centre half, that's not strong enough. And Toslin, who's playing it there in the moment, they might get top 4 by just being the best of the rest. But I do think the top 3 of Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, I think they'll beat most teams, if I'm being honest. That's my current feeling. I know Man City have started struggling. They've obviously lost at Spurs already at home and stuff, and they've obviously lost at Brighton as well. I think they'll be right up there. I think them top 3 are locked. I think they're going to be unbelievably tricky for any team in the league. After that, I think anyone can beat anyone, though. I really do believe that at this moment. Also, as well, I think we're in this part of the season. I think this is something to bear in mind with this. We're in a part of the season at this moment where naturally you see more upsets because people are not fully in the swing of it. Naturally, when at the start of the season there is more chaotic results because understanding tactical plans for the rest of the season, understanding how they're going to play, getting your fitness to a certain level. Like, for example, at Liverpool, Alexander Isak's not in the swing of it yet. He will get into the swing of it. He's not in the swing of it at this moment in time, but he will get into the swing of it. I think Wirtz will probably get into the swing of it as well. Liverpool understand how Kirkes and Frimpong should be introduced into the team. Obviously, this isn't the Liverpool lens, but my point is that especially these top teams, but even the lower teams, they're not fully in the swing of it yet. They're still understanding the best way to play with the new signings that they've made in the summer. There's still cohesion that needs to be made with the new signings. So I think naturally when there's that going on, you do see more upsets while teams tweak it. And then they find a winning formula and they stick with it for the rest of the season. You see this over massive season. Like, even look at Man City and the runs that they've put together. They don't put massive runs together at the start of the season. They always put massive runs together back end of the season when it's just churning out results over and over and over again. So I do think they're all going to be hard games. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I think them games are particularly interesting. I really do. Because I look at it, as I said, and I've just changed my mind on it completely. I just think that the likes of Brighton's and the likes of Forest away and the likes of, obviously, Aston Villa at home, I'm not as worried as I once was. We might lose them all, and I might be completely wrong. But at this moment in time, I look at them games, and I think they're all opportunities for points. So yeah. Anyway, let's leave it there. I think we've gone about half an hour. Thanks for everyone, obviously, in the chat, the likes of Jack, the likes of Easy. Easy's always in here, I feel like. Sebastian as well, who's a really regular on the channel. And we'll be back tomorrow for the live match reaction. So if you want to be there, then obviously bear in mind. Someone said our biggest criticism has been... we'll get in there's a few more comments and then we'll go. Someone said our biggest criticism has come from the media or football pundits. Our squad's biggest criticism has come from our own fans. I'm not sure I fully agree with that. Teams of DF are always starting slow. Yeah, that is true. That is true. I think Man City are also quite slow starters traditionally as well. But yeah, Daniel Farke's naturally over the last few years. I mean, I was looking at Leicester at this moment in time, and I've got a Leicester mate as well. And I was talking to him the other day. And Leeds United I thought Leicester have had a bad start. Leeds United last year won 4 games in the first 9, by the way, in the Championship. We should do that this year in the Prem. It's crazy. Anyway, I shall see you all later, everybody. And if you do want to be around for the match reaction, obviously it'll be straight after the game, so you talk about 2:30. Be there, or, I don't know, be a square. No idea. Anyway, see you all later, everybody. Bye for now. Oh, and also, sorry, can you drop a like and subscription and all that good stuff, please? Thank you. It really helps. I'm quite a small channel, so